Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Paranormal Dimension. My name is Sean, and in today's video, I'm going to be counting down the top 5 most haunted places in America. Remember to hit that like button and consider subscribing, as it helps me out a lot. Without further ado, coming in at number 5, we have the Stanley Hotel, Estes Park, Colorado. The Stanley was built in 1909 overlooking the rocky landscape of Estes Park. In 1974, the famous up-and-coming horror author Stephen King and his wife checked into the hotel. The story goes that the couple stayed the night in room 217. During the night, Stephen King awoke from a nightmare, one in which his son was being chased around the hotel corridors by a fire hose. After realizing his son was safe, he said to have lit a cigarette. By the time the cigarette was finished, he had had the foundations of the film The Shining laid out in his mind. This film later went on to be one of his bestsellers and evidently gave the Stanley Hotel its famous reputation that it holds today. The room 217 is said to be haunted by a maid named Elizabeth Wilson. Elizabeth, who was unaware of a current gas leak, was lighting gas lamps inside the room. This unfortunately led to a massive gas explosion that flung her body a story down. To many people's surprise, she actually survived the explosion with just 2 broken ankles, and once recovered, she went on to serve the Stanley as a maid until the day she died. Some guests that have stayed in room 217 have reported leaving their room only to come back to see their belongings unpacked and folded neatly on the bed, almost as if Elizabeth is still carrying out her duties after death. Other guest paranormal reportings include hearing strange noises coming from within their room and shadowy figures standing at the end of their bed in the dead of night, only to disappear before their eyes. The Stanley also features their main staircase, which has captured one of the most compelling pieces of evidence of the paranormal to date. This photo was taken by a member of the public that was touring the Stanley Hotel, showing a clear image of a lady dressed in white on the staircase. No one in the tour had seen her, and this evidence only came to light when the visitor looked back on their photos later that day. Many guests have awoken during the night to the sound of children playing, laughing, and giggling in the corridors outside their room. Annoyed, they have gotten out of bed, opened the doors, to find the corridor completely empty and silent. Coming in at number 4, we have the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. Built in 1886, this prison was said to be a humane place where offenders could be rehabilitated. However, it quickly turned into a place known for its torture, abuse, and murders. The prison ran for 94 years. In that time, seeing over 154,000 inmates locked up within its walls. During this time, there are said to have been over 200 deaths that have occurred within the prison, some due to diseases such as influenza and tuberculosis. However, the majority of deaths, unfortunately, occurred through violence amongst the inmates and suicides. Multiple hangings were reported, as well as an inmate who managed to set himself on fire and burn to death inside of his cell. One report states that 2 inmates were locked up inside of their cells for 3 days straight, and when the guards finally let them out, one inmate walked out. The other one was found deceased and stuffed under the lower bunk. Tours are held at the Ohio State Reformatory today, where some visitors claim to hear footsteps behind them, cold brushes of air past them, and some even claim to have been poked and their clothes tugged on to turn around to see nobody there. Many paranormal investigations have taken place at the Reformatory, and some of the evidence captured includes hearing taps and bangs, disembodied voices and screams, the smell of tobacco smoke, and even shadow figures have been captured on camera. Coming in at number 3, we have the Conjuring House, Connecticut. The Conjuring House was originally built in 1736, however, did not gain fame until the year of 1971 when Roger and Carolyn Perrin and their 5 daughters moved into the property. The Perrin family started to notice strange happenings almost immediately after moving in. Carolyn would notice her wooden broom would disappear from its usual place. She would also hear the sound of something scraping on her kettle inside the kitchen when there was no one in there. She would also walk inside the kitchen to find small piles of dirt in the middle of the floor. The 5 girls started noticing spirits around the house. Though they believed the spirits to be mostly harmless, there were some that seemed to be angry and malevolent. The spirit of Bathsheba Sherman was popularised by the Conjuring films. However, she is documented to be a real woman that actually lived inside the property in the mid-1800s. She is believed to have been a Satanist and also to have practiced witchcraft. The story goes that she married a rich farmer, Jensen Sherman, in 1863. Shortly after their marriage, she gave birth to a baby at just 1 week old. It's said that Jensen witnessed Bathsheba sacrificing their child to the devil in front of their fireplace. Caught out by her husband, she is said to have run outside to the dock of the property, climbed on top of the tree that grew beside it, proclaimed her love for Satan, and then committed suicide by hanging herself from the tree. After the paranormal activity started to ramp up within the household, the Perron family sought help from self-proclaimed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed and Lorraine come to the property shortly afterwards to investigate. They believed that the malevolent spirit that was tormenting the Perron family was none other than Bathsheba Sherman. Ed and Lorraine stated that Bathsheba had an attachment to the Perrons and wanted them dead, and said they would need to perform an exorcism on the house in order to rid the spirits from the property. Although it's not clear whether any sort of exorcism took place, it's said that Roger Perron kicked the Warrens out after fears of his wife's mental stability, and the Perrons lived in the property until 1980, where they evidently moved out. The Conjuring House is still a very active hotspot for spiritual activity, and numerous paranormal investigations, TV shows and YouTubers have flocked to the property trying to capture evidence of the paranormal, or better yet, evidence of Bathsheba Sherman on camera for themselves. Coming in at number 2, we have Bobby Mackeys Music World, Wilder, Kentucky. Bobby Mackeys opened as a nightclub in 1978. However, the actual building itself dates back much older, being a slaughterhouse and inn, and even being taken over by the mafia for some time, where numerous murders are said to have taken place on the property. Other illegal activities documented there include gambling, drug running, and alcohol smuggling. Probably the most famous case of Bobby Mackeys is that of Carl Lawson, a caretaker that worked and lived in a studio flat above the property. The story goes that the spirit started to torment Carl. They would move chairs around, throw things at him, and would even stop him from sleeping by slamming doors and moving things around in his apartment. One night, it's said that he was awoken from his sleep to a demonic voice telling him to dig in the basement. Carl then found himself digging up the floor in the early hours of the morning to uncover a well that had been buried under the property. This well has earned the name the Portal to Hell due to the amount of activity that's amplified within the property after it was uncovered. It is said that Carl Lawson later on became possessed by a demonic entity named Charlie, and an exorcism was performed on him inside the property by a priest. This exorcism was actually filmed and documented and can even be viewed online today. Bobby Mackeys is still an ongoing nightclub today that features honky-tonk country music sung by none other than himself, Bobby Mackey. Whilst it primarily opened as a nightclub, a large amount of its revenue comes from its ghost tours that are held all year round. Staff and visitors commonly report hearing footsteps, witnessing objects moving seemingly on their own, such as snooker balls and bar stools. Some even claim to have been pushed and scratched by unseen entities, and many also have witnessed dark shadowy figures and full body apparitions. The tour comes with a waiver that must be signed before entry and should not be taken lightly. Bobby Mackeys is said to be the most haunted bar in the whole of America. And finally, coming in at a number 1 spot, we have the Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. Waverly Hills first opened its doors in 1910 as a two-storey sized hospital to house 40 to 50 tuberculosis patients. Due to the rapid spread of TB in Kentucky, renovations were constantly ongoing to increase the size of the sanatorium to house more and more patients, and by the year of 1926, the expansion created a 5-storey, 400-bed, isolated compound to house the diseased and the dying. Even after the expansion of Waverly Hills, the sanatorium quickly became overcrowded and understaffed due to the rising levels of TB in the surrounding areas as more and more patients were sent there. This created inhumane and unhygienic living conditions. Reports of abuse from the staff and neglect of the patients had the sanatorium closed down for good in 1982. During its 72 years of operation, it's said that up to 60,000 people died within the walls from tuberculosis. There was a 500-foot tunnel built beneath the hospital to transport the bodies of the deceased out of the grounds, leading to a railway line where they were loaded up onto carriages and taken away for burial. This tunnel is known as the Body Chute, and it is said to be one of the hospital's most active paranormal hotspots. Today, Waverly Hills Sanatorium offers historic tours and paranormal investigations to the public. These are extremely popular, and there is said to be a long waiting list to explore the abandoned property. It's not uncommon for visitors and tour staff to experience paranormal activity inside the sanatorium. Such reportings include the sound of footsteps, disembodied voices, full-bodied apparitions and shadowy figures that seem to lurk around the empty halls of Waverly Hills. Some visitors have claimed to have been pushed, poked, scratched, and even had their personal belongings such as phones and cameras yanked out of their hands. Paranormal investigations taking place have recorded some of the most compelling evidence of the paranormal ever to be captured on camera. Photos and EVPs of spirited voices have also been documented on film. This place is certainly not for the faint of heart and remains today as the most haunted place in all of America. And that concludes today's video of the top 5 most haunted places in all of America. What are your thoughts on these locations? Have you ever been to any of these places? If not, do you believe you would be brave enough to do so? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like, and if you'd like to see more top 5 content like this, then please consider subscribing to the channel. This motivates me to make more videos and also helps me out a lot. Once again, my name is Sean, and this has been The Paranormal Dimension. I'll see you guys in the next one.